great to have you back for another Brain Blast. Today, I want to tell you a bit of a story, a bit of narrative. It's really interesting. It's one that is, I've always found so fascinating, and it's to do with one of our most important names in the generation and understanding of stress and anxiety, Robert Sapolsky. Now, I don't know whether any of you have seen pictures of Robert Sapolsky, but for someone who goes out into the jungles, into the wild and studies baboons, he's kind of like the perfect guy to do that. He's got a lot of hair on his face, and he's a fascinating fella. And he was the first one who got a sense of this idea of a stress hormone, something going on, and then through his work with baboons, he gave us the information about cortisol and a lot of those other areas of stress and long-term stress and the effect that it has on our emotions and on our social capacities and our social skills. So look him up, really interesting stuff. But he was studying these baboon tribes, and he studied them for decades and decades. And he had a particular tribe that he was following. And one of the things with baboons, he says, is actually, although I study baboons, I don't like them terribly much. They're kind of jerks, particularly the males. There's a lot of really unpleasant behaviour in baboon tribes where the alpha males, they'll treat the women very badly, and they literally will just go up to a junior male and just whack them, you know, for no reason whatsoever. So the junior males are sort of wandering around constantly afraid of what's going to happen to them. I mean, talk about a winner-loser world. Goodness gracious me. These poor junior males are wandering around wondering whether the next look they're going to give is going to get them a slap across the head. And so anyway, they're wandering along and they're doing things, and he's following this tribe, and there's 2 or 3 other tribes around the place. And human encroachment over the years gathers in, and as it turns out that within the framework and the edges of the territory of this particular tribe, there was ended up being a rubbish dump. Now, the alpha males went up there one time, and they found there was all this food. There was meat that had been thrown into the rubbish dump, and so they're there eating away. There was another baboon tribe that came to the big fights and all this carry on. Anyway, in true tradition of sort of, I suppose, unpleasant jerks who are alpha males, they just ate all the food. They didn't take any back to anybody else. This was spoils of privilege. So they ate the meat, they went back, and really it was a bit sad because the meat was tainted with tuberculosis, which is very, very dangerous for baboons, and the whole alpha male set in the baboon tribe died out. Wow. Really, really tricky, really, really testy. So Sapolsky thought, well, I wonder what's going to happen. I'll keep observing. And even though he didn't like him much, he was pretty sad for the whole case. And a fascinating thing happened. All the non-alpha males, the B males, I suppose, the way they had been able to keep going and keep having some kind of fun, and of course in that area, having sex is a very important thing, having intercourse and procreating. And the only way that they could have sex was to be nice to the girls. Whereas the alpha males would just demand it, and you know, those various other things of what happens with alpha males. And anyway, so these young males, these B level males, continued to be nice. And what they found was that, of course, the girls said, well, this is good, we rather like this, we rather like sex, we rather like sex with people who aren't smacking us in the head. So they had more sex, and what they found was, these B males, that they were given more sex and more frequently, and they were given it in a quicker time frame. Now, what's interesting in baboon culture and tribal culture, and possibly it's hardwired, but teenage baboons actually leave their tribe and they go off and find another tribe. And this is good because it keeps the gene pool spread. Anyway, so one of these sort of roaming teenagers, a couple of these came into the tribe, and of course they're coming in there beating their chests to be alpha males because they've come from that experience. And they come in here, and these calmer, nicer, more gentle, more kind males, And the girls said to these new teenagers, sorry, you're a jerk. I'm not going to have sex with you for much longer. For months and months and months. It's going to be really hard. And what happened was, of course, the teenagers coming in looked at the behaviour of the more thoughtful, the more considerate, the more caring, I suppose, baboons, and they learnt that behaviour. And Sapolsky followed these baboons for quite some time, and over a decade, they maintained that flow. They never reverted to the alpha male style of culture. Wow, how fascinating. But it took a catastrophe. It took the removal of the entire principle and idea in order for the other idea to come forward and be taken seriously. And we say this a lot. It takes the dominant group to accept a change before a change will be acceptable. Now, I learnt that in linguistics, where even though the subgroups are saying this is important language, it wasn't until a dominant group said, yes, that's right, and what we call in English, received English, till the received English group said, yes, we accept that change, that it really became readily changed. But here was different. They lost the whole upper hierarchy, controlling hierarchy, and boom, things changed and stayed changed. It was considered to be a preferable change. Now, another example, I suppose, of that, a way of looking at how does this relate to humans, I don't know whether any of you have seen the work by Jane Elliott, the blue eye, brown eye experiments. And what she did, when it was many years ago when Martin Luther King was killed, and she wanted the children to understand what it meant, get some sense, some felt sense of what it meant to be somebody who was not in the preferred group, not the main, the dominant aspect of the tribe. And so what she did was she divided people up into blue eyes and brown eyes. So I suppose in the US that was sort of dark-skinned to light-skinned. And she separated them, and she just applied what she thought were the sorts of difficulties that, well, you know, the baboons, the bee tribe, the bee group and the baboons were doing. Unreasonable, unpredictable disadvantage. And the blue-eyed kids were in the middle, and they were treated as inferior. And the brown-eyed kids were then behaved superior. And boy, did it rock things. Did it rock the establishment. In fact, she had a terrible time. She lost a job. She was pushed out. But she continued these experiments. And it is extraordinary. Look them up on the web. One of the ones that just struck me so strongly was a blue-eyed, he was an Irish American guy, and he came to the front and he was cocky, he was strong, he was determined, and they just beat him down. And it took about 3 minutes, and he was separated, he was sent to the back of the room, he was isolated from his friends, and he sat at the back defiantly, but with tears rolling down his cheeks. And at the end of the experiment, he walked up to some of the people that he knew, obviously, who were of darker colour skin and the disadvantaged group. And he just said, oh my God, I am so sorry. So maybe we don't have to give someone a disease and knock them all off. Maybe we can just one by one get a sense of things by experiencing the other people, by being in their shoes. This is one of the reasons why I actually really strongly advocate that everyone should do acting for 6 months to a year, where you learn how to be other people, where you actually learn what it is like to not just pretend to be in their shoes, but to be in their shoes. It's not something I'm saying is easy and can be done straight away, but I give it to you now, today, as food for thought of this interesting story of a baboon tribe and Robert Sapolsky and Jane Elliott and the blue eye and brown eye experiment. See you next week.
So what do baboons teach the average person in there? Don't bite somebody because you're having a bad day. Don't displace them in any sort of manner. Social affiliation is a remarkably powerful thing, and that's said by somebody who lives in a world where ambition and drive and type A-ness and all of that sort of thing dominates. Those things are real important, and one of the greatest forms of sociality is giving rather than receiving, and all of those things make for a better world. Another one of the things that baboons teach us is if they're able to, in one generation, transform what are supposed to be textbook social systems sort of engraved in stone, we don't have an excuse when we say there's certain inevitabilities about human social systems.